Oh yes, it is time.
What in the world are you doing?
Well, you see, my dear hard drive, Jack Skellington thinks he's so cool with his Pumpkin King elixir. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make myself a Jacket King elixir!
I do not believe such a recipe exists.
Yes it does. It's written right here.
That is your own handwriting.
Ah, what do you know?
A lot. Storing information is the purpose I was built to do.
Would you at least humor me with this? Alright. Demon blood to give me strength. Slimed souls of the damned to connect me to the spirit realm. A bit of cloth to represent the jacket. Diet Angel Grace to enlighten me.
That is available in diet.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. Various poison tablets to make me immune. A bit of paprika for taste. A knife. And now for the final ingredient. A mushroom!
I would proceed with caution. My database indicates those specific fungi have a tendency to explode.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, now to stir this all together, and I'm sorry, did you say explode?
No more Mr. Nicebones.
G'day peoples and non-peoples of the internet, I'm Ghost Ion, and happy Halloween! I hope you're having a super spooky time in all the right ways. Make sure to brush your teeth after gorging on all that candy. I don't want to have to act like your mother, but I will if I have to. With the Halloween holiday comes many beloved films that are watched each year by people all around the world. Unsurprisingly, most of these are horror movies. Friday the 13th, Alien, Nightmare on Elm Street, and of course Halloween, among others. But maybe you don't want a horror movie. Maybe you want an animated Disney movie created by Tim Burton. Frankenweenie! Nah, I'm kidding. I mean The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's upside down. The Nightmare Before Christmas. Released under Disney's Touchstone Pictures label on October 13th, 1993, The Nightmare Before Christmas is regarded as one of the studio's best by many people. The film was a success both critically and financially and was re-released in 3D 4 times between 2006 and 2009. It's constantly brought up as one of the best Disney films, best Halloween films, best holiday films, etc. And it's one of Tim Burton's most well-known works despite the fact they didn't actually direct the film. That was done by Henry Selick. Personally, I'm not as gaga for the film as others are, but I still do enjoy it. It's got great music, good characters, a fun story, and gorgeous stop-motion animation. I'd watch this film 100 times just to look at it, I'm not even kidding. With the film's success, cash-ins were inevitable. Card games, concerts, t-shirts, statues you have no idea where to put, and of course video games. Although, for as popular as the film is, there's a shocking lack of video games based on it. Of course the film was represented in the Kingdom Hearts franchise in 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and Chain of Memories. This is personally how I was introduced to it. Other than that, there's The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge for the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. I covered that 2 years ago if you want to check that out, which effectively acts as a sequel to the movie. Finally, there is one more Nightmare game that came out on the same day as Oogie's Revenge, in North America at least, that also expanded the film's lore but was on the Game Boy Advance. This game is known as The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Pumpkin King. The Pumpkin King was released on the Game Boy Advance on September 8th, 2005 in Japan, October 10th, 2005 in North America, and November 10th, 2005 in Europe. It was developed by game studio Toes, most well known for the Starfy games, and serves as a prequel to the movie, showcasing how Jack became the Pumpkin King and his first encounter with Oogie Boogie. I mentioned this game very briefly in my Oogie's Revenge review to get a point across that anything Nightmare related refuses to make new villains in favor of just reusing Oogie Boogie over and over. I hadn't heard of this game until I started researching Oogie's Revenge actually, and that leads me into my next point. See, if the film is up there, and Oogie's Revenge is on the floor, then the Pumpkin King is in the Marianas Trench in terms of notoriety. Despite getting above average reviews unlike its sister product, this game is not very well known at all and is barely discussed in the Nightmare fandom. In fact, I'm willing to bet most people only know about the Pumpkin King because of the video Rebel Taxi did on it and Oogie's Revenge, which, side note, this guy decided to post his review of Oogie's Revenge on Halloween 2016 exactly like I had planned, you son of a bitch! Moving on from my completely justified rage, I figured this game was worth taking a look to see if a prequel is necessary. If you asked me, I'd say no. I like the characters and all, but I personally don't care about how Jack got his title or how he met Oogie Boogie. But hey, maybe the game will change my mind. Full disclosure, while I do own the game, I have no way of recording Game Boy games, so I did have to emulate it to get the footage. But hey, now you know, and knowing's half the battle.
What is the other half?
Murder. we start the game up and... Oh goody, the war flashbacks start early! The story begins with the pumpkin explaining what's going on. The Pumpkin King takes place years before the movie. Halloween is hours away, and Jack Skellington is getting ready for the big occasion. I can hardly wait to show the good ghouls of Halloween Town my latest trick. Tonight, they will all see why I am called the Pumpkin King. Expect a little more enthusiasm there, Jack. It appears I was wrong about this game telling how Jack became the Pumpkin King, but hey, that's fine. It's cool. I don't care. Meanwhile, Lock, Shock, and Barrel are talking to Oogie Boogie about Jack and how he's the head honcho of Halloween Town, presumably all at once based on how the text boxes are labeled. Oogie sends out the three to capture Jack, only for them to bag Sally instead, so Oogie just decides to take over the town regardless. The cutscene ends, and thus we are able to start the adventure. You control Jack like how you'd expect. D-pad to move left and right, A button to jump, and it works very well. The controls are very tight, meaning Jack goes exactly where you want him to without a fuss. He's light, but he doesn't slide around all over the place, and he has a decent jump arc, so undershooting platforms is rarely an issue. That being said, there are times where you can't make a jump if you don't have a running start, and that can be an issue if you're being chased or trying to time a jump correctly with a projectile. Finally, he can climb ladders. It's ladder climbing, it's pretty self-explanatory. You travel through the game through levels sectioned off into different rooms that branch off into different paths. This is known as a Metroidvania style of gameplay, and as I am not too familiar with this genre, I won't try and go much deeper than that. There are 3 types of collectibles in this game. First, there are fish bones which act as health. They come in 2 varieties, small, which heal 2 health points, and large, which heal 5. Why fish bones of all things heal Jack of all characters is beyond me, but hey, if it works, it works. Second, shrunken heads that expand the amount of health you're given. There are 10 in total within the game, and if you're hurt, they even refill your entire health bar upon retrieving them, which is nice. And finally, there are items belonging to the townsfolk that have been scattered all around the place. There are 20 in total. Throughout the game, you'll be given different weapons and abilities to aid you in your quest to stop Oogie Boogie as well as find the collectibles. The first weapon you obtain is the frog gun, a frog that belches to hurt enemies. It doesn't have a lot of range, but it takes out enemies fairly quickly. Next, there's the bat boomerang, which is definitely the most accurate portrayal of a boomerang I've seen in fiction, as it doesn't actually come back to you. The bats thrown have a greater range than the frog gun and have a little bit more height to them. However, they don't do as much damage as the frog gun. The funniest part about getting this weapon is that Jack straight up steals it. Remember kids, if Jack Skellington does it, you should too. This message is brought to you by the Walt Disney Corporation. Oh, the snipers found me. Third, the pumpkin bomb, a thrown weapon that is used to break down certain special walls and objects that hold items in them. Unlike the other 2 weapons, this one requires ammo. I assume that it does more damage than the other 2, but most of the times I tried to use it in combat, I missed, so it's best to relegate it to just breaking things. The 4th and final weapon is the Pumpkin King Elixir. Upon consumption, Jack turns into a flaming scarecrow. Like the pumpkin bomb, this one requires ammo and there are special walls that it can break down. You can't move while in this form, you can only jump and dash. Due to this, it's not good to use in combat as more likely than not you will get hit, so it's best to use it only when required to break down walls or cross gaps. As you progress in the game, you will receive upgrades for all your weapons except the elixir. The frog guns upgrade allows you to put out a continuous gas cloud, the bat boomerangs makes you throw 3 bats out that home onto enemies and can pass through certain objects, and the pumpkin bombs is used to progress the story. I assume the upgrades also increase their damage output, but I couldn't say for sure as I didn't notice a difference. All weapons are fired with the B button, and you can cycle through them with the L and R buttons. Once fired, Jack is stopped in his tracks and cannot move unless you stop using them, which can be an issue if you're trying to quickly kill a bunch of enemies and need to move out of the way, or are on a moving platform. Outside of the weapons, you also obtain abilities that are used within the environment. Zero, Jack's faithful dead companion, sniffs out secrets indicated by his glowing nose, and he can transport you to different areas in several specific sections where you guide him through a tunnel. These sections are decently fun, but it can be hard to tell if you're going to hit something. Maybe that's just me. The Stretchy Ghost, which is activated by hitting a tile found in the level. This ghost lets Jack stretch up to higher platforms that he can't reach. Since you have to hit a tile to activate it, you'd assume that there's a time limit on it before you have to go and hit it again. But no, it just stays there until you use it or leave that area. The name is also fairly non-indicative, seeing as the ghost itself does not stretch. Acid bats, where leeches will melt down Jack, allowing him to traverse through gaps in the terrain. Once through, press up on the D-pad to return to normal. When melted, Jack looks like a bootleg No-Face. Was that necessary to state? Probably not, but you can't unsee it, so I win. Finally, gumshoes provided by the Melting Man allow Jack to scale up specific walls. Other things Jack can use in the game that aren't really environmental abilities, but I didn't know where else to put them, shut up, are the electric chairs and scarecrows. Both of these are generally found close to one another, either in the beginning or middle of a level and right before a boss. Electric chairs refill your health back to full, while the scarecrows act as save points. Okay, I can understand the scarecrows because they can act as decorations and can also scare off birds who might want to pick apart the residents, but leaving electric chairs all around seems flat out irresponsible. It'd be like if I was walking down the street and stumbled upon a nice bottle of ibuprofen. Moving on to presentation, the game looks very nice. The sprite work is very well done and pleasing on the eyes. Each character is easily recognizable and looks pretty much exactly like they did in the film, so there won't be any confusion or comments of, I guess that looks like them. Jack's sprites definitely had the most work put into them, which makes sense seeing as he's the main character. Each and every animation really does fit his character, from how he crouches to how he attacks. Well, almost every animation. Some of them do look a bit out of place or too goofy, like this one which makes him look like he's going nom, nom, nom. The only sprites across the game I would say don't work are the enemies. They're not bad, they just don't fit the aesthetic of the movie in my opinion. Similar to that, I must admit that the color palette doesn't really scream The Nightmare Before Christmas to me. It's a lot more vibrant and colorful than one would expect from Halloween Town. That's not to say it's bad at all, I just expected the town to be depicted with darker, muted colors, like in the film and even Oogie's Revenge. However, I could see this being done to make it more obvious as to what is what, seeing as darker colors may have been harder to differentiate on a tiny screen. The music is pretty well done too. There's a nice mix between original tunes and remixes of songs from the film. The problem is the songs tend to loop a lot, which by itself isn't great, but I also have an issue with chiptune tracks where they get on my nerves regardless of how much I like them, so I ended up actually getting headaches while playing thanks to the music. And to the guy who decided to have this sound effect play every single time you pick up ammo or health, who hurt you? Well, I think that covers the important gameplay stuff. Let's get back into the story. It turns out that Oogie has sent an army of bugs to infest Halloween Town, driving everyone into hiding. The first level, I believe, is done very well. The very first things you see once the first cutscene ends are signs telling you how to play without interrupting the actual flow of the game. There are multiple paths to take, but the game places arrows to help guide you where to go, and the game will show you elements in a contained environment to show you how they work before you need to use them. For example, right after you get the frog gun, you find some enemies that are placed slightly above you so you can get an idea of how the combat works before you are needed to take out the enemies while platforming. You have to use the frog gun on these spiders to freeze them temporarily, thus turning them into a platform. The first time they show up, they're in a corridor, then you actually need to use them to progress. It's a simple form of explaining game mechanics, but I enjoy it. But now we must face the first boss of the game, a giant spider. Which I must say, as a guy with arachnophobia, is immensely satisfying. It's not a bad fight, although I'm so skilled that I did it without taking a hit. Woo! Yeah! Woo! Cool! Awesome! Radical! Very nice. That's cool, I guess. Can I go home now? And that is when we hear the best track in the game. That's nice. Next level up is Jack's house, where we encounter Shock, Lock, and Barrel. Well, actually we start on the path to Jack's house, which I guess he had removed sometime after this game. Hey, I don't blame him. If I had to run through a cobblestone passage every time I wanted to get to bed, I'd probably rip the thing down with my bare hands. Jack decides that he needs to go and get Zero to sniff out whatever suspicious antics the three are up to. Upon finding Zero, however, it turns out to have been a ploy by Shock, Barrel, and Lock to trap Jack. Then they immediately leave him alone because that's smart. Luckily, Zero gets us out through the chimney, presumably dragging us through all these cobwebs he's avoiding. Then it's time to head to Dr. Finkelstein's lab. What Ghost didn't know is that it was all downhill from there. Now, here's when some questionable design choices are added in, such as these Tesla coil things that shoot electricity at you. The first shot comes from off screen without any warning. Fortunately, it's easy to dodge unless you suck like I do. However, they also require you to be on elevated ground or running in order to get over them. If you aren't either of those things, you will not clear them and more likely than not will take a hit. Second, the area of effect on them is kinda stupid. Third, the noise. Oh, don't think it's that bad? Try hearing multiple going off. Lovely. Speaking of this area, I really don't care for it. The multiple coils going off is annoying as is, especially since Jack likes to grab the ledges above them and get hit. But the truly awful part? Having to climb back up, where now you have to time your climbing with the coils, Jack will sometimes not climb up and thus get hit, and you have to jump over the coils, which, let me tell you, is not easy when you only have a tiny runway to work with. All this for a lollipop, by the way. Yeah, it's a catchy song, but it's not worth, hell, I left the placeholder joke in. The second boss fight is against a huge snake who is holding Finkelstein captive. You have to hit it in the mouth while it's agape to hurt it, which is annoying as it's constantly moving and only keeps its mouth open for a short time. And Disney, Burton, Selleck, fourth guy. A snake isn't a bug. Stop trying to pass it off as one. Once we free Dr. Finkelstein, he sends us to the pumpkin patch to free Corpse Kid from a possessed pumpkin, which we do by attacking the roots. This level isn't really an improvement over the last, and that's in large part due to the roots. Not the possessed ones, the normal roots that block your path because they're found next to ladders above spike pits and will knock you off if they hit you. The actual possessed roots are pathetic. After doing that and gaining the pumpkin bombs, Corpse Kid is kidnapped by Barrel, Lock, and Shock, so we have to go get him. Now's a good time to bring up this aspect of the game, backtracking. Backtracking is when you go backward through a level you just did. Generally, it's because you missed an item needed to progress or because you wanted to try and grab something before you leave, but here it's required to get back and forth between the levels. You enter a level, get through it, complete your thing, then go backwards through it, typically finding a new route you couldn't take before thanks to the new item or ability you've been given. I've heard this is a common thing in Metroidvania games, and I can't comment on that as a whole, as like I said before, I'm not too familiar with the genre. The only game of this type I can recall playing is Song of the Deep. But I can say that in this game, it's not fun to do. It's just boring, and for the most part, it doesn't seem like the levels were designed to actually accommodate the backtracking. And boy, the arc on these pumpkin bombs is abysmal. It works if the thing you need to hit is right in front of you, but good luck trying to hit anything above you. These blocks also respawn once you leave the area, so if you don't have enough bombs, have fun farming enemies for them. We free Corpse Kid and end up in the graveyard. The only things worth mentioning here are that we get the stretchy ghost and fight an annoying grasshopper boss. This is where we begin what I call the return section of the game, meaning we have to return to the previous levels to explore new areas and complete new objectives. The first one is the town square to fix these leeches because they've gone bad. Jack leaves the victim here like a true hero. To fix the leeches, we have to destroy these machines that are putting bad blood into the acid baths around town. Once all three of them are destroyed, we get the ability to use acid baths. We return to the graveyard and use this new ability to meet up with the mayor, who enlists us to find ingredients for his lunch, taking time away from us saving the town. Glad to see his priorities are in check. Ice physics! Except it turns out the ingredients aren't for lunch, but for the melting man. Plot twist? He informs us Oogie was the one who took him apart, or rather the mayor informs us for him since he can't speak apparently, even though we know he can.
Red and black.
And he gives us the gumshoes to allow us to leave and get back to the pumpkin patch. The witches are here, and they want to make an elixir for Jack that could turn him into the Pumpkin King, I guess. They just need one more ingredient for it. Yeah, I'm crabby, and you want to know why? It's because of that thing right there. The noisy gnat, a stage hazard that will take you back to the start of the room you're in if you're in its line of sight. The only way to avoid it is to hide under the mushroom caps. Then you have to wait. It gets even better when you have to stay under moving caps. Listen, the movement in this game is great, but it becomes awkward trying to keep up with the moving object with the input sensitivity options of on and off. Oh, but you know what makes it better? Once you get the ingredient, it turns out it's gonna fucking explode! So you have to run back through on a time limit, with obstacles in your way, and this thing forcing you to hide or redo everything, wasting your time! Oh, but it gets better! You get to fight a terrible boss here too! The only way to hurt this roly-poly prick is to get it near these pumpkins and blow them up to stun it. Then there's phase 2 where you just hit it in the mouth. Why should I continue? That level was atrocious! Why should I bother to continue playing the... You're lucky you got that motivating jingle game. Let's continue. It's time for a lightning round! We must return to the graveyard to stop Lock Shock at the third one. This light supposedly is helping us, but really, it does nothing. Then we have to return to Finkelstein's lab to save Igor, and I hate these conveyor belts so much! After that, it's back to Jack's house, and now it has gas that reverses the controls. Now we're in Oogie's lair, but we don't get to fight him just yet, as first we must get the clown with the tearaway face's face back. Nicolas Cage joke. This section has a lot of bad platforming and requires a few leaps of faith. At the end, here's this room where you have to kill a swarm of bugs to get the face back, and it takes far too long to do. After giving the clown his face back, it gives us the bomb upgrade that we use to go into the depths of the deep dark cave system that I guess Halloween Town has. I'll cut the game a little slack here. It introduces us to these spike balls that we have to grab onto and jump off from one to another. I mean, it's finicky and bad, but whatever. With me being a dumbass though, I thought the game expected me to have to stand on the balls to jump from one to another, and it made me really angry.
This on me. This one is on me. Gentlemen, my bad.
Finally we meet up with Oogie Boogie. Wow, I never thought I'd be happy to see this guy. He sicks a thing on us and then escapes to lock the girl in Barrel's treehouse. No, wait, don't make me play any more of this, Oogie, please! Now we have to climb up the treehouse, avoiding Red Skull and contending with evil buckets.
I've got my eye on you.
And at the top, we finally, actually, for realsies this time, fight Oogie Boogie. The scenery changes into Oogie's lair from the film proper, I'll add it to the list, and he rolls his die to determine what traps activate. We must wait for him to get winded, only then can he be hurt. And with that, we have beaten the Nightmare Before Christmas, the pumpkin. Psych! There's another boss battle after this! Oogie mounts I'm not even gonna pretend like I know what that is, and enlists Pee-wee, Shock, and Barrel to act as his tiny, bratty, awful little bodyguards. You hit the thing, then he'll stop to get it back up, and that's when you're actually hurting him. Is it hard? Nope. Is it long and boring? You know it! But we do it. By God, do we do it! Jack begins to scold Oogie Boogie and the Mischief Makers, telling them if they ever leave the room, it's game over.
Does it work? What do you think?
Sally gets rescued. Oh, yeah, I forgot about her. And the day is saved. Everyone's happy and Oogie vows revenge.
Does he do it? Did you even see the movie?
But hey, I don't care. I'm done. I can put this franchise behind me. Roll credits.
I think I've been driven crazy by this game. That's probably not good.
What is there to do after the game ends? I suppose you could go back and try to find all of the shrunken heads and items of the townsfolk. That'd really only be doing it for the sake of it though, as far as I have learned, you don't get anything for actually collecting everything besides 4 pieces of concept art. 20 collectible items for 4 pieces of blurry concept art. Not worth it in my opinion. There are some mini games you could play outside of the main game, 3 to be exact. They can be played in single player or multiplayer through the Game Boy link cable. I have no one to play with, so I just did them myself. The first minigame, Bone Breaker, is a simple button masher. Quickly press left and right on the D-pad to crush your skeleton first. The person who crushes theirs last gets eliminated, and the minigame ends when one person is left standing. The second minigame, Whack Hammer, involves pressing A and B to crush rats and bats while avoiding bombs. You have to use the right hammers on the right animals. I wasn't very good at this one as I get buttons mixed up under pressure and thus use the wrong hammer on the wrong animal. The third and final minigame, Skullduggery, is just a variation of the shell game. There are 4 boxes, a shrunken head is placed in one of the boxes are mixed up, and you have to pick the one with the head. It's easy, but it goes on for 10 rounds, so it becomes incredibly boring incredibly quickly. Oh, word of warning, make sure you're careful once a minigame ends, cause if you restart, there's no way out besides shooting yourself in the head. Or just turning the game off. I guess that works too. The mini-games are fine, but they're definitely not something worth returning to, even if you do have people to play them with.
So, that was The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Pumpkin King. Would I recommend it? No, which is unfortunate because it did show promise at first.
The game has a very appealing visual style, even if it doesn't fully fit the source material in my opinion. It's colorful and the sprites are well crafted, Jack controls well, and you have some fun weapons at your disposal. The first few levels are enjoyable to go through with some good secrets if you're willing to go and grab them. The music isn't bad either. There are decently well done remixes of songs from the film, and of course the defeated boss jingle is great. Although, the tracks loop way too frequently and get irritating insanely fast. I had to mute this game during most of my playthrough because it was actually giving me a headache. Outside of the first couple of levels, the items and health upgrades are put in areas that punish you for even daring to try and grab them and makes them not worth the effort. Several of the abilities you get don't feel necessary, such as the Stretchy Ghost, which is basically just a replacement for a ladder that you have to activate. If they had replaced it with a ladder or another item like the gumshoes, nothing of value would have been lost. As a whole, the entire game begins to take a nosedive at Finkelstein's lab and falls apart once you have to return to the pumpkin patch, where it begins shoving in gimmicks and a ton of obstacles in your way that absolutely ruin the goodwill it set up. Also, remember how this is a prequel? Well, the plot is completely pointless because it goes through the same beats we've seen in the film and Oogie's Revenge. Holiday shit is happening, these three twerps cause mischief, Sally gets kidnapped, and then Oogie shows up at the end. Hell, the plot for this game is basically the same as Oogie's Revenge. This game adds absolutely nothing to the movie. Jack becoming the Pumpkin King? No, that's already his title. Jack and Oogie Boogie meeting? They only meet at the very end and they barely have an interaction. Jack and Sally meeting for the first time? Again, only at the very end and barely an interaction. Oogie Boogie meeting Lock, Shock, and Barrel and enlisting them? Happens off screen. Hell, Halloween, the holiday Jack was preparing for? We don't get to see how that plays out. Isn't it weird that Jack is supposedly the king of Halloween, yet we never actually see him participating in the holiday that he's the king of?
If you're not gonna add anything creative or meaningful to the franchise, why make the games at all? Oh right, money. Oh but wait, these games didn't sell very well, so they even failed in that regard. Whoops! Better luck next time, Diz! Oh come on.
The best part of this game is the defeated boss jingle. It's a nice remix of This Is Halloween, it's triumphant, and it doesn't repeat enough to get annoying. The worst part of this game is easily the noisy gnat section in the Return to the Pumpkin Patch, especially once you have a time limit. It's just a bare bones, tedious as hell stealth section.
Same different platform. It's a shame Nightmare doesn't have good games because there is potential there even if they just wanted to make a rhythm game. But instead we got these two minimal efforts. I said it before and I'll say it again. If you want a good Nightmare Before Christmas game experience, play that's not Kingdom Hearts. Play Kingdom Hearts. Otherwise, just stick to the movie. You're not gonna get anything from playing these games. Well, besides this. That makes it all worth it. Good night, peoples and non-peoples of the internet. I'm Ghost Ion. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to stay fabulous. Roll the outro!